And in terms of Everton, obviously they've had the takeover recently. A couple of their players have been linked with links of exits this month. Is is it a case of they will have to move players on to sign players, or does it depend really on their PSR situation? So is it a difficult one to really see where they're really at with it this month?
Yeah, look, we'll know a lot more from the middle of this month to see whether they've got through the 23-24 situation, which I expect them to have done so, aside from one wrinkle, which is this outstanding case that they have in respect to the stadium interest. Well, the interest, and whether it's just stadium interest, which is, still, we think, scheduled for another Premier League hearing. Now, that should have happened by now. Why it hasn't is sort of anybody's guess, really. There's been a few rumours that it's actually already been settled, but we've seen no official confirmation of that, and we've seen no official confirmation that the matter has been dropped either. So it does look like it's ongoing, but we'll know more. It's amazing. The reason that it's amazing is because not only will it impact the historic, the 22-23 position, and could lead to potential points deductions if it goes against them, but because of the way any decision is going to work, it's going to have a knock-on effect into this season. So it probably will mean, in the worst case scenario, it probably would mean that they would also fail 23-24. Now, the thing that's surprising then is you would have thought that they would have wanted that decision out of the way so that they could assess 23-24 on the accelerated timetable that's in place, so that they know the end result by the end of the season. But if actually we haven't even started to deal with the 22-23 situation yet, if that's going to take sort of 2 months, 2.5 months, it's going to be very, very close to the end of the season before you can get a decision on the other bit, if it went against them. Now, as I say, I think if you take out that, if you exclude this interest case, you would have thought that they got to 30th of June of this year and they did the deals that they needed to do to be okay for 23-24. So if the interest goes for them, I think they'll pass 23-24. And then we don't need to talk about that situation anymore. You then need to say, well, okay, what can they do in the transfer market? Well, 24-25 is going to be another challenging season for them. There's no question about that. So they're going to be borderline, which means that they're not going to have, there's definitely not going to be loads of extra capital available. The question is, who can they sell? Well, you've got to sell for profit. They've got a whole load of players that are out of contract earning the season. Now, that's a positive in some respects, but it's going to mean that they're going to have a massive rebuild at the end of the summer. Do they also want to be selling, let's say, Branthwaite, who is the obvious player with real value? Well, it's a big, I wouldn't say it's a gamble, but it's a big call to say, okay, we're going to try and get 50 million from somewhere and reinvest that. So, look, they're very, very tightly bound in by PSR. I would think they're going to have to wheel and deal and loan moves and these sorts of things. But they've got very little leeway. And that's even in the best case scenario from the interest case that's still to be resolved. So we're just going to have to see. But the availability of the cash now is not a problem because they've got deep pockets behind them. The problem is the PSR situation.
Yeah, definitely want to see how that evolves across this month. But yeah, elsewhere involving Everton, Neil Maupay caused a bit of controversy among the fans after he posted a comment online mocking Everton after the defeat against Nottingham Forest. Is there any chance Everton could take disciplinary action against him? Where would they really stand on that, given he is still actually a player belonging to Everton?
Yeah, I mean, well, clearly he's in breach of his contract, but I think because he's on loan, I think they'll leave it. I mean, I think he's out of contract at the end of the season, or there's a guaranteed deal with Marseille, so he's not coming back. So I think technically they probably could take disciplinary action, because it's definitely going to be in breach of his contract to be, to say to bring the club into disrepute or to say negative things about his employer will definitely be a breach of his contract. But I suspect they'll just leave it, given that he's not really, they don't really perceive him as their player anymore.
That makes sense. Then elsewhere at Everton, the new stadium is set to open next season, and they've announced that they're going to hold 3 test events to obtain safety and health and safety certificates for the stadium. Is that likely to just be a formality? These things often take place and go through quite easily.
Well, I think the good thing about it is that they're starting that in February, so they're obviously way ahead of a lot of these sort of stadia projects, where they start to, sort of pull it all to an end much closer to the start of the new season. I mean, Everton have got a long time there to get any snagging done or wrinkles in the approvals. So I would think they're very well placed to be in for next season. So I think that sounds very positive for them.